What's up YouTube, it's Ace from Fit to Play Games. Today I want to tell you about my top 5 favorite RPGs for the original PlayStation system. This is beyond the Final Fantasy series, so grab your coffee, have a seat, and relax. So, coming at number 5, we have Granstream Saga. You assume the role of the warrior named Aeon, wielding the power called the Scepter, which grants Aeon the power to absorb the abilities of enemies that he defeats. And the Scepter allows him to use the magical abilities and power of that absorbed enemy in the form of sword and shield. The game revolves around magic and melee-based fighting. He does this as he searches for the artifacts left behind by the wise men of the past that protected the world. Granstream Saga is a game that is basically a hack and slash without the turn-based. Even though it was set up like that, I still think this game is still pretty fun and very enjoying to play. As I played this, I found myself getting easily sucked into the story. I love these types of games because it reminds me of how RPGs got started and got better throughout the years. So the game mechanics for the Granstream Saga was a little quirky because it lacks the details most RPG games nowadays have. You can never compare this game to the Skyrim or Fable, for example, because the game lacks the motion and details for gamers to identify their movements. When I play this game on HD, however, I do notice that the faces of the characters are blank, hence when they do talk in RPG sense, the character portrait shows up, so I hardly even notice because I'm too busy reading the text of the storyline as I get into the game more. However, the graphics look still beautiful when played on HD. Granstream Saga is something that I highly would still recommend to RPG players and collectors because it definitely is a game that I believe paved way for game developers to improve future games for us to play for the following years whenever this game was created. Coming up next at number 4 is Wild Arms. Wild Arms was developed by Media Vision for Sony Computer Entertainment of America. In Wild Arms, you assume the role of 3 different characters: Rudy, Cecilia, and Jack. So basically, the game was something that I really enjoyed. The game was different from other RPGs I played before. Most RPGs were created 2D, but for Wild Arms, the battle system was rendered in 3D, which made the game stand out for me personally. The story of the game revolves around the people of Philgalia and the Metal Demons. The Metal Demons sought to destroy Philgalia and planned to take over and make it their world. As the war waged on, the Metal Demons leader who was called Mother, was defeated, but was not destroyed. Hence, the heroes that defeated her took her heart and split it into 3 pieces. Decades later, some remaining metal demons raided the place where Mother's body was being kept, and they were able to retrieve her body so they may put her heart back together when they gather it to bring her back to life and resume the domination of Philgalia. To me, the game is considered a run and gun for the RPG format, which I think was fantastic and different. This was one of the best RPGs I've ever played before a certain franchise came and dominated the RPG world. You know, guys, I'm just kidding. So one cool fact about this RPG that Game Informer magazine stated was this was by far one of the best action RPGs of that the year this was created. It definitely praised the game's use of 3D battle graphics and also the addition to the 2D graphics of any normal gameplay. It definitely received 9.25 from Game Informer itself. So for Wild Arms, this is a game that should definitely be part of any collector's collection. You know what? Excuse me. Let me rephrase that for you guys. That should be a part of any gamer's collection, especially my fellow role player gamers out there. This one is or something that I highly recommend for you guys to get and play and at least get the experience. So, guys, next up at number 3 is Parasite Eve. Parasite Eve was developed by Squaresoft. And yes, I know you guys are probably gonna yell at me for saying no Final Fantasy, but Parasite Eve is definitely an exception. It is definitely different from the Final Fantasy series because of its action turn based style of battle. The game revolves around Aya Brea of the new NYPD, New York Police Department. While attending an opera, she is tossed into chaos by a performer named Melissa Pierce, who causes everyone in the opera house to spontaneously combust. I remember this so clearly because it was one of those selling points that definitely dragged me into the story. I'm like, what's going on? So, being the protagonist, Aya is the only one who isn't affected by everything that's going around her. Aya then confronts Melissa, who then claims to be Eve, in the middle of the stage. And Eve presumes to say that Aya's mitochondria isn't fully awake yet. So that kind of tells you something that Aya, not being affected by the spontaneous combustion around her, has some kind of power that battles whatever Eve has. Hence, the chase for Eve and Aya's quest for answers begins. Parasite Eve is definitely a golden goose type of game, in my opinion. It is action turn-based RPG. To me, back then, this was something totally new, and I fell right into, and I couldn't stop playing the game. It was so enjoyable. I remember replaying this game after I have just finished it. I have to admit though, some of the baddies in the game was definitely grotesque, especially in the early stages of the game where the mouse transforms into this really grotesque looking creature that spits fire out of its tail. Aya's character was the very first female protagonist I have ever encountered playing any RPG, which was interesting. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with female characters, but it felt like games were created with male characters in mind, saving the damsel in distress. Parasite Eve was definitely a nice change of scenery and story. Parasite Eve is a game that deserves a space in a collector's and any gamer's collection alike for sure. If I were to give this game a score, I could easily give it a score of 10. So guys, for all of you who are role-playing gamers and collectors, this is something I highly recommend. All right, I'm very excited. In number 2, I have for you guys Legend of Legaia. Yes, a game that has its own acronym. LOL. Get it? Now that we got that out of the way, Legend of Legaia, I personally consider this game as a hidden gem. Only a few amount of people still remembers this game. For me, however, I remember it like it was yesterday. this game surely left a mark on me because of its unique game mechanics. For sure, the game is like a fighting game RPG. The inputs of different direction while gaining spirit unlocks different moves for the characters. Speaking of characters, there are three characters that are involved in basically main characters. There is Vaughn, Noah, and Gala. The game starts in the village of Rimelm. I know you guys are probably thinking Rimelm. I wish they could have chosen a better name for their village, but oh well. Moving on, the village is protected from the mist, which causes Cerus to attack humans on sight. And any Cerus attached to a human transforms the humans into mindless puppets. So the night that before Vaughn goes to his first hunting trip, the gate is broken down by a villain and lets the mists into the village. And Cerus from outside the village starts to attack the villagers that was outside of their homes. As Vaughn works hard to protect the other villagers, he then hears a voice calling him towards the Genesis tree. Now, the Genesis tree is this tree right in the middle of their village, and this is where he meets Meta, I believe, the Rasiru's name, which is a different type of Seru who isn't affected by the mist. Meta then attaches himself to Vaughn, and Meta helps Vaughn defend the villagers in the village, and also by gathering all the villagers from the village in the middle of the Genesis tree. As they prayed in the Genesis tree then revives and destroys the mist around the area where Rimelm is located. And so Vaughn's quest to revive all of the Genesis tree and to rid the world of the mist begins. Aside from the main quest, there is also so much to do in this game. There are also mini games to keep you off the main quest as you explore the different reaches of the game. There is also an arena, I believe, to test your character's mettle and prizes to be won, obviously, so you can further customize your character's weaponry and the armors that they wear to make them more effective in combat. This is for sure an awesome addition to anyone's gaming collection, and it comes highly recommended by yours truly. So if you guys come across this game, definitely pick it up. I for sure, no doubt, you would enjoy the game as much as I do. So yeah, definitely a good game to pick up for sure. Now we get to the best, and I believe the ultimate game that deserves top 1 for my top 5. It was hard to just use one of them, so the top 1 I decided to choose 2 games. So at number 1, I have for you Suikoden 1 and Suikoden 2. The best and the most hidden gems and the rarest game for the original PlayStation system. Suikoden 1 puts you in the shoes of Tyr McDowell. Being the son of the great general of the Emperor's army, you are entitled to serve in the Emperor's army, much like your dad. But everything turns the other way around as soon as your friend Ted goes home injured after going to the castle to meet the Emperor's court magician, who turns out to be a magician who is after the rune of death that Ted passes on to Tyr to protect. Furthermore, Tyr becomes an even greater enemy of the Empire by meeting the Resistance Army's leader, Odessa, who sacrifices herself to save a little boy's life and dies for that cause, while Tyr resumes the mantle of the Resistance Army's leader. Now, my most favorite part in this game is the castle building. Basically, as you gather more follower and characters to use in battle, you can mix and match different characters and find new combinations to give you an advantage in battle. For sure. It's a very good game. And the game aspects and the game mechanics is by far, for myself, I see it as perfect. Now, we move on to Suikoden 2 as also being part of my top one. So, Suikoden 2 is nothing but excellent. The game mechanics, they improved it better than the very first Suikoden, which means it was a lot smoother. There's more character mix and match moves that you can use either for a group attack or single attack for more damage. Definitely a very good game to check out if you guys ever come across it. I am going to warn you, however, these two games will not ever be cheap at all, just because they're rare. Their rarity is very hard to come across. That's all I could say about these games. Otherwise, the best feature of the whole Suikoden series comes from being able to get the games that you have saved from the original Suikoden all the way to the Suikoden 2. And one of the hidden parts that I've came across with this game is that you could actually use Tyr McDowell from Suikoden 1 and have him transferred and be used in Suikoden 2. So that's something you guys can actually take advantage of, especially Tyr having the rune of death. So that's something that you can help you in earlier levels within the Suikoden 2 games. Otherwise, definitely a good game to pick up, and for sure something that would make any collector or any gamer's collection somewhat complete, and definitely deserves any of your cases to be displayed on. In addition, I was really impressed by the way Konami actually created the part 2 of this game, the rivalry between Ryo and Joey, whose childhood friends has blossomed into a really amazing friendship, including Ryo's sister, who's also going to be part of your growing army eventually as you delve and get deeper into the game. It was such a this is game is such a well balanced game in my opinion. I wish I just have a better how should I say it, a better version of the game. Unfortunately, I do have the game, but I do not have a manual when I bought the game. So, you know, some one of these days I will find a version of this that has a manual. I believe I'm gonna have to shell out if I do want it somehow, but otherwise it'll be a good purchase. Otherwise, because it does retain its value. Also, I do not plan on selling any of these games just because they're already part of my collection, and I hope you guys find that as well, that this would definitely be something to collect. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the review and also enjoyed this content. I will for sure post some more top 5. Maybe I'm gonna go and try and do a top 10 for you guys for the next content, but I'm kind of hoping you guys will give me more inputs. Tell me in the comments below what other games you think that I should take a look at, and maybe I would probably have them in my collection, but please let me know. That is my list for April 2019 for my top 5 favorite role-playing games for the original PlayStation system beyond the Final Fantasy series. Yes, I put them in order that way. It kind of hurts me because I feel like they could all easily be at the number 1 of my top 5, but I guess I had to put them in order that way. But it doesn't mean that I don't like any of them any less. It's just that I kind of wanted to put them in order, and I didn't want to put any Final Fantasy in there because I myself is a big fan of Final Fantasy, and we all know about Final Fantasy. A ton of people have already made contents about Final Fantasy series. So anyway, thank you for watching the video. I will see you guys in the next.